So this is where the magic happened, huh?
I mean, it looks pretty gritty down here, and the truth is, even back then, it was pretty gritty. But I've been involved in this for about 15 years. I knew the owners here. I said, let me do a game in the basement. We worked out percentages.
Let's take a look at the spot.
Absolutely.
So New York is full of storefronts, but they aren't all what they seem. Some house illegal businesses, others are illegal apartments. And the city of New York is perfectly okay with all of this illegal activity taking place around us for some reason.
Police say these underground dens are big business, pulling in tens of thousands of dollars a week.
When you look inside, those are the different gambling tables. Is that a schedule right there of who's working the door?
Inside this mini storage facility was a massive counterfeit goods operation, according to authorities. There were shelves brimming with purses, wallets, and accessories, the kinds of things sold on Canal Street or Fifth Avenue.
We turn our attention now to the dozens of migrants found living in the basement of a furniture store in Queens.
The store owner told us he allowed 74 men to live in the basement because he wanted to help them.
I think they got some of the bad players that were warehousing this and supplying it to many individuals that work on the streets of New York.
They had a pawn shop in the front and basically a warehouse in the back where they were stashing stolen stuff that they would buy from shoplifters. They would give them shopping lists and tell them what they needed because what was going to move quickly.
Got a game tonight? Yeah. Can you hold seat for me? I got you. But tonight we'll probably make between 3,000 and 4,000.
The number of vacant stores in New York has doubled over the last 4 years. But what's not being talked about is that these storefronts, they still have value, even though on the surface it looks like nobody would want anything to do with them, except New York's thriving criminal underworld. Because these empty storefronts used to all be legitimate businesses, but high levels of crime, high taxes, and societal unraveling have created the perfect storm of conditions to shut down pretty much any company. First, it was your independent stores shutting down as they couldn't keep up with the retail theft wave sweeping this city. But after they started closing, criminals turned their attention to the big guys. The Targets, the Walgreens, CVS, and now those stores too are shutting down and moving out. But there's a problem because the buildings that these empty storefronts are in are still owned by someone who presumably still has bills to pay and still likes money. So when an illegitimate criminal comes along and offers to pay rent, many store owners turn a blind eye and hand over the keys. Which brings us to the real reason why New York has a growing epidemic of fake storefronts. The real stores that were here, they folded because of crime problems, and they've been replaced by criminal businesses that don't have those problems. But these new tenants, they're not exactly a net benefit to the neighborhoods that are now unknowingly housing them, and they feed off the societal decay of a city that won't punish crime, almost like parasites, which can exist and flourish while their host remains alive, but in the end will be the reason it too expires prematurely, revealing that if New York wants to turn this ship around, it better take action and arrest somebody for something. But that might be very tricky because these new tenants, they don't want to be seen, they don't want to be found, and they're happy to leave these stores looking just like this to hide what's inside, which, as you're about to see, could be pretty much anything. So here we have a bunch of empty storefronts, which look useless, but actually aren't. Plus, what you see on street level is just the tip of the iceberg, because some of these businesses have basements and back rooms and other areas that you don't necessarily know would be there from looking at the front door. And although a closed storefront certainly provides cover because you can't see inside, a legitimate looking business that doubles as an operation for something else also works for certain types of criminals, who seem to have found a way to pay these landlords much more rent than they would be getting otherwise.
I was making like $13,000 a week. I was losing $20,000.
There's a game running in New York City, and some say 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's multi-billionaires sitting in certain games. There's addicts struggling to make $20 playing in others.
So the first type of criminal activity on our list today is illegal gambling. It's perfect for an abandoned storefront or a restaurant basement somewhere. And apparently the people running these operations are making lots of money. Yet not only are they doing something that's wrong and illegal, they're also making money off human suffering suffering because many people who gamble have a problem and don't even know it. But what else can you do with an abandoned storefront nobody wants? Or with a business that's existed for a while, used to be profitable, and now just doesn't make as much as it used to? Well, if you aren't interested in doing the right thing, you could go and do the wrong thing, which you shouldn't do. But apparently, these businesses, they get propositioned all the time by people who want to do something else in an area that might be private or not visible from the street. And when these criminals see an empty storefront, their minds start racing. What could they get away with in hidden areas of the store that nobody will know about? They don't even need the place for that long, just long enough to make a lot of money and then move on. And this presents a big problem for landlords whose properties have been sitting empty for months. And some of them are agreeing to allow these businesses to operate.
I've been involved in this for about 15 years.
Okay.
You know, give or take.
So this is where the magic happened, huh?
I mean, it looks pretty gritty down here, and the truth is, even back then, it was pretty gritty. But the most important thing is the money on the table, so guys will play.
So the place in question here, it looks like it's being operated in a very sketchy-looking basement, which is underneath a legitimate-looking restaurant that gives it cover and makes everybody who walks inside look like they might be eating at the restaurant. It's probably not safe. Someone could slip, fall, get hurt, or they could be breathing in asbestos. Ugh. But the real crime here is that these places are allowed to exist, hiding beneath our feet, behind our storefronts without any of us even knowing it. And the reason you have places like this all over town is because the people participating in whatever activity is going on, they're not the criminals. Well, they are, but the real criminals the city's after are the ringleaders who set up these operations. They could care less about the participants. Yet the participants that want to gamble are the reason these places keep popping up. There's just too much temptation. And that's a problem because in this city, we've already got enough criminals who are tempted to commit crime as it is. And the last thing we want to do is give them more ideas that would potentially embolden them or get them to do things that are worse than what they're already up to. And we've already got rising reports of gang-related activity in our city. Do we really need to give them more ways to make money? Because that's exactly what they're looking for, and it's already happening in other parts of the country.
All right, so this location looks like it's right next to a convenience store. This is a laundromat, and they've already got 6 people against the wall here. Those are the different gambling tables. Is that a schedule right there of who's working the door?
Yeah, it looks like either who's working the door flags.
Now, whoever's running a place like that, they're obviously part of some criminal enterprise already. But with rising gang activity in New York, it's only a matter of time before more of these empty storefronts start getting repurposed into something else. Maybe even something worse than gambling. Recently, a gang of moped-riding thieves were busted using an apartment as their hideout, where they would then break into the stolen phones and open the wallets of people they'd just robbed. But the real issue here is that once you have one type of criminal activity which is surging, it becomes a magnet for other criminals. They discover it, and they want a piece of the action, which makes things get ugly. As these criminals start targeting and preying upon each other.
This place never got robbed. We kept it discreet enough. Some of the other places got robbed.
What was that like?
I was dealing, there were 10 tables full. 2 guys came in with guns, kicked the door open. Like everyone on the floor, everyone empty,
So already these places, they're being targeted and preyed upon by other criminals just like they do their own customers in a sense. But the real tragedy here is what it does to the neighborhood where this kind of stuff is happening. Think about it. If you've got a neighborhood full of derelict buildings that nobody can seem to get any use out of, and the only people profiting from them are criminals, that's gonna just bring money to the wrong parts of society and cause that to grow. And neighborhoods where criminal activity is flourishing are just going to attract more criminal activity, not more legitimate businesses. And the real problem we're now facing is that there's just so much crime going on in our city all the time, and our police are so short-staffed. When they do catch criminals and shut them down, there are usually 10 to 20 other operations they don't even know about. And that's because our police, they're too busy paying attention to high-profile areas of town like Central Park, where there's now a crime wave involving robbers that they're looking for. There's a ton of security going on there, and to a certain extent, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You're always going to have police in a place like the subway or a place like Central Park before you will have them scoping out abandoned basements that aren't really making any noise, allowing the bad guys to cultivate criminal enterprises at levels that should not be allowed to happen, which you're about to see after this word from our sponsor. The topics we're covering today reveal that we live in a crazy world, and it doesn't help that news comes at us 24/7 from both reputable and not so reputable sources. And as someone who spends hours researching what goes into these videos, I can tell you firsthand that many outlets are only giving you their preferred version of the story, which is why you need to know about Straight Arrow News, today's video sponsor who helps you find fact-based, nonpartisan reporting on every topic that matters, while helping you walk through the minefield of biased reporting that is today's media landscape. Straight Arrow News lets you discover all sorts of perspectives, see the facts, and come to your own conclusions on whatever it is you're reading about. First up, they've got the media landscape, which tells you what networks are covering a given story and which side of the political spectrum they're on. Plus, Straight Arrow News divides opinion-based articles based on the right or left orientation of the given contributor. And their contributors include prominent, sensible voices from all across the political spectrum. On top of that, there's even a media mist tool which highlights articles that the mainstream press may have been too busy spinning their audiences to cover. But the best part is Straight Arrow News is completely free. Check out the link in the description of this video to see what a difference unbiased, fact-based reporting actually makes. So here we have one of the many storage facilities scattered throughout New York City. Now, they do serve a very legitimate purpose. People live in small apartments. They don't have enough space to store all their stuff. But in addition to being used as legitimate storage, places like this may also be storing things that are anything but legitimate.
Inside this mini storage facility was a massive counterfeit goods operation, according to authorities. Something that was fairly obvious to Greg Zuman, who rents space here.
This place was just a beehive, and it was crammed, and it was jammed, and it was insane, and it was...
So if you've ever been roaming the streets of New York and you've seen somebody with a blanket full of illegal merchandise out on the sidewalk that's ready to be wrapped up and thrown over their shoulder and taken away to safety, a lot of that stuff comes from storage facilities like this. To make matters worse, the owners of these facilities probably have no idea that some of their customers are putting things in them that they shouldn't even own. Yet criminals make so much money selling stuff that they shouldn't, they're always looking for new places to put inventory because it's just so profitable.
Authorities say there were shelves brimming with purses, wallets, and accessories, the kinds of things sold on Canal Street or Fifth Avenue. Mark Jaffe, the CEO of the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce, says the counterfeit industry also isn't good for legitimate business. 2 men are now under arrest, and the joint effort by Homeland Security Investigation.
Now, it looks like in this raid that took place earlier in the year, 2 people did indeed get arrested. But just like in the gambling dens operations, all of the pawns that are part of that scheme, all of the infrastructure, so to speak, it's all still out there. The people selling the stuff that comes out of these places, none of them got caught doing anything. And since this is their full-time job, selling the stuff to make a living, they're just gonna go somewhere else to get their wares. Sure, some of the inventory that was in the storage facility is now off the streets for good, but the people selling it, they need more, and they're gonna do everything they can to find it. And of course, everything that's being done to sell counterfeit inventory is illegal. Street vending is illegal, but there's never any crackdown as far as the city's concerned on these low-level habitual offenders. But as you're about to see, there's also a lot of money to be made selling legal-looking products out of legal-looking storefronts, just as long as everything being sold inside the store is stolen.
And one of the big problems are people stealing food and selling it to local bodegas. And one of the things that bodegas apparently love is Haagen-Dazs ice cream. So guys will go in there with a garbage bag, load it up with all the Haagen-Dazs in the place, run to the nearest bodega, unload it at the bodega.
You know, this is just a great example of how allowing crime that cannibalizes legitimate businesses threatens pretty much every business, because if you sell something that can be taken, it can also be resold somewhere else by criminals for money. And the fact that even little newsstands and bodegas are getting swept up in all of this is just astounding. To think that the beverages in their refrigerators may not have come from legitimate distributors, but were instead stolen from somewhere else. Now look, this little place here, it's probably legit because I don't see a grocery store selling perishables across the street where things can be taken from and then sold in here. But the reason we have all of this theft is because it's not criminal if it's below $1,000. It's just a misdemeanor, and criminals can steal over and over again as many times as they want, and every time they get caught, it's the same penalty, which is just a desk appearance ticket. But the next illegal business on our list combines all of these tactics into one.
In one case, they had a pawn shop in the front and basically a warehouse in the back where they were stashing stolen stuff that they would buy from shoplifters. They would give them shopping lists and tell them what they needed because what was going to move quickly.
So here we've got a little bit of everything, and operations like this exist all over town. Legitimate looking storefronts doing something very illegitimate. Like a cosmetic store which doubled as a fencing operation and had $1 million worth of stolen stuff inside. And these businesses, they get their products by stealing from department stores, Target, Gap, Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, Macy's. Those items then go to a warehouse of sorts, which could either be in the store itself or in another location, where the products are prepared for sale at another location. Which explains why legal businesses have to shut down. They can't compete with thieves who steal their inventory and then resell it for less down the street, as was in the case of this one particular cosmetics chain. It was near Macy's where they were stealing from. But now the question is, how complicit are landlords in all of this crime? Certainly these stores aren't renting themselves, and owning real estate in this city is so expensive with all the fees and charges that the city hits you up for. Some owners are definitely cashing in with crime.